In this movie, we see the struggle that many young suffragettes went through in order to obtain the overall goal of women's voting rights. These younger suffragettes in the movie, they suffered backlash from not only their community, their peers, but police, politicians, and even their fellow women activists in the older group of the National Women's Suffrage Association. Suffragettes from the National Women's Suffrage Association worked against Paul in the movie, forcing Paul and her team to form their own National Women's Party, where they fought to gain an amendment for women's voting rights instead of the state-by-state approach that the NWSA was supporting. Paul and her followers believed that by petitioning for an amendment rather than the state-by-state approach, this would be more effective. She didn't know how long it would take to get every single state. So the first time we can notice information in our text being portrayed in the movement was when we see the parade's conventional crowd quickly turn into an acting crowd. Acting crowds occur when people collectively engage in destructive behavior because of strong emotions. The men and people that were fighting back against the parade, they believe very strongly against women's rights and voting rights. They were seen hitting, throwing, and just overall harming the participants of the parade. And even though that this was harmful and many women were injured, the NWP, they saw this as a success because this turn of events gained them a lot of attention and also more participants to their movement. We also see examples of the free rider problem in this movie, which the free rider problem is when people, they know that they can gain, they will improve from the outcome of a movement, but they don't know necessarily if they should participate in the movement or if they should just, support it but kind of not do anything for the movement. So we can see this in the beginning when there was the woman, she eventually began protesting with Paul and her other associates, but she said, if I protest Sunday, then I will be fired on Monday. Who is going to feed the children? And then we can also see the free rider problem when Miss Layton, at first, she is not willing to talk to the suffragettes. She doesn't think that she will be able to participate, even though she does later on in the movie. But eventually she has to withdraw because of the political conflict with her Democratic senator husband. So Paul uses framing and frame alignment approach as described in our text to get people to join and understand her movement. We know that framing and frame alignment approach describes issues and feelings toward the movement in a way that participants can agree and feel that it closely matches their beliefs and feelings. So, getting people to understand and relate to the movement will help get people to fight for the movement, gain publicity for the movement, and just overall support it. Let's see. So she becomes moving place to place to, have these rallies and speeches and share what she believes is right in order to gain these feelings and closeness with her participants in order to help them maybe be more inclined. So she also used moral shock tactics in order to get people to join the movement when she expresses what happened to everyone in prison and how she was put in a straitjacket and ultimately did not have even basic human rights. And this really shocked and outraged people and got them to, you know, understand what was going on and try and fight for the cause. Moral shocks were also used when the women were picketing outside of the White House and they were arrested for obstruction. There was the next scene where Paul and other women, they are reading quotes that the President Woodrow Wilson was talking about, and his quotes were not accurate with what the laws were, and this was also a big shock for people. Social movements are present to bring about change. As we learn from our book today, scholars do not focus on successes or failures of movements. They try to look at outcomes of this movement. So I think that ultimately the tactics and the way that the NWP peacefully protested and got their message out about women's suffrage led to the outcome of the voting rights for women in the United States. Outcomes of this movement, they changed public policy as well as attitudes towards women in the United States.